there's a new Gorillaz album. And it seems to be kind of traditional for Gorillaz to do that at this point. You know, when Plastic Beach came out, about a year later, a little under a year later, it was followed by The Fall. And last year in April, we got Humans. And now this June, we got The Now Now. And very much like Plastic Beach and The Fall, The Now Now is sort of stripped down, more like a solo Damon, or if we're going to be meta and look at the characters in the fictional band, a solo 2D album. And it's actually really, really good. Although I think very much like The Fall has to be talked about in the context of the collapse of the Plastic Beach project and this really, really crazy ambitious thing just running aground and running out of money and being smacked down by the record company. And everything I've heard about how the Plastic Beach project went, I think the Now Now has to be looked at in terms of the critical reception to Humans, which was not good. In fact, the Now Now is kind of the anti-Humans in a way, because whereas Humans was very, very contemporary pop, in a way that no previous Gorillaz, I don't mean just contemporary pop, as in like pop as a genre. I mean like in terms of contemporary hip-hop, contemporary electronic, whatever. Humans was very contemporary pop in a way that I don't think any Gorillaz album previous really had been, besides maybe the debut. But I'm not educated enough about the trip-hop of the late 90s and early 2000s to really say much about that. To go off of something I said, I think in my review of the debut, there could have been a half dozen albums came out in Great Britain in 98 to 2001 that sound exactly like the Gorillaz debut, but I wouldn't know anything about them. And so when I say that Demon Days and debut sounded unique, I'm talking about from an American perspective. Back to Humans. Not only was it contemporary pop sounding, it was as I said in my review, the most faceless Gorillaz have ever been. Half of the album doesn't even sound like Gorillaz are on it, you know? This album rectifies every critique of and this album rectifies pretty much every critique that Humans has. Sometimes it goes a little too far, but for the most part, it's everything that Humans wasn't. It's down to earth, it's laid back, it's got all the Damon Albarn that was missing from Humans. And this is probably the most refreshing thing to me about this album. It's totally doing its own thing. It's not aping what's popular right now. It's not riding any coattails. It's just sat out in the corner off by itself, or maybe out in the middle of a field on a sunny day, you know, just chilled out and enjoying life. The sound is pretty eclectic, but at the same time, possibly the least eclectic that Gorillaz have ever been. A lot of this stuff is very much grounded in synth funk, with probably the most obvious example being Lake Zurich. But throughout the entire album, there's this big 80s kind of synth funky vibe, and that's something I really, really like, because, again, this is like jazz. Genre I love, I never talk about. I absolutely love funk music. I can't get enough of it. You know, whether it's Funkadelic or James Brown, the Ohio Players, you know, even some Primus, you know, I just can't get enough of the stuff. And, you know, almost anything that has well done funk, I will like. And so, consequently, I really like a lot of this album. And if I've compared this album a lot to The Fall, that's mostly because of the circumstances of its production. Honestly, the Gorillaz album before this album that the Now Now is most reminiscent of is the self-titled. Because unlike The Fall, where you kind of got the sense that The Fall was just something Damon slapped together in a couple months and then just put it out and said, here's an album. This got a full-blown publicity campaign, cool music videos, etc. You know, pretty much all the trappings of a new Gorillaz album. And I think a lot of that's probably because Humans didn't go the way they planned, but I've kind of snarked at Humans enough in this review. And that really brings me to another point here, where something that struck me as I was listening to this on the way down today, which is that this is the first Gorillaz album since the debut that doesn't feel like an event. For all of its flaws, Humans felt like an event, especially when you have grandiose tracks like Hallelujah Money and really just Hallelujah Money, which as I keep saying, is easily my favorite song on Humans, and more than justifies that album's existence. But, you know, Plastic Beach was very much an event, even if half of that event got canceled because they blew all the money on the music video for Stylo. And Demon Days, oh my god, Demon Days is like a huge event. You know, Demon Days is one of those albums where you can't just listen to one song, where I can't just listen to one song, or when I do, I'll be like, oh, I want to listen to Feel Good Inc., and I'll wind up listening to the entire album after Feel Good Inc., because it's so easy to keep going. But usually I listen to it as a unit. But no, all of those albums felt like events. You know, they were big, had ambitions, they were in your face, they were there, they were big, they were a thing. This is, like I said in the intro, kind of just laid back out there, just minding its own business. If you want to enjoy it, you can. But if you don't, that's no problem. But yeah, anyway, I cannot recommend this album highly enough. I really, really like this album. And I'm sure as I listen to it more and more over the coming days, I'll have much more to say about it. In fact, I've been thinking for a while that I might want to do a follow-up video for a couple of my first impressions, especially for last year. Last year was kind of a interesting year for music. You know, for me it was a year of disappointing follow-ups by bands and artists who have previously been like top 10 artists of the modern era for me. St. Vincent, Gorillaz, even Primus to a certain extent put out albums that disappointed me a little bit. Although I know I've got a lot of Primus fanboys amongst my audience, so I'll preface that by saying that I think that the last year's Primus album is fantastic. It's just not necessarily what I want from Primus. But at the same time I recognize, you know, they're old enough now, they can do what they want. They can experiment. They gave us Pork Soda 25 years ago, you know, and they don't really need to be giving us anything more like the classic Primus, because we already have the classic Primus. So, you know, if they want to do what they want, that's great. It's just not really my favorite, and I wish they could have done something more along the lines of Green Naugahyde or that fantastic EP they did in 2003, 2004. But anyway, this has been my review of the Now Now. I'll probably do another review later on in the year. Maybe it'll be a little shorter, wrapping up my thoughts about the album more fully once I've listened to it in much greater detail. But anyway, until the next video, which is going to be something very, very special, a review of an album by the dual presidents of the United States themselves.